So you want to play as a Space Marine, but not in Warhammer 40k, in Dungeons & Dragons. Well, more specifically, Demetrian Titus. And before anybody gives me crap in the comments about this, yes, I understand Warhammer 40k has a ton of great games and is built around an amazing tabletop system, but D&D is its own system. It is usually more heavily focused on the role-playing, but has plenty of wargaming tendencies, whereas Warhammer 40k is pretty heavy into the wargaming. There are two different systems, both of which are very worthy of the attention and praise they get, but we're built in D&D because this is a D&D builds channel. So let's go ahead and dive in and build Demetrian Titus as a playable character in D&D. But if you like any of this sort of stuff, make sure to subscribe, like, comment, hit the notification bell, all that stuff. Any interaction with this video helps the algorithm and lets that algorithm know that you might want more of it. Not to mention you roll more nat 20s when you happen to be subscribed to this channel. But let's go ahead and dive in and start with the species. Now, you could go with a human, which is totally valid, but most Space Marines are pretty darn massive. I mean, the earliest stages of being a Space Marine, it's pretty common for you to be 7 feet tall, but when you get to those higher levels and higher ranks, you can be up to 10 feet tall. So because of that, I'm going to go with a Goliath for the species. The new 2024 version of being a Goliath gives you some different options than the old one. First, you get giant ancestry. So you can choose a particular type of giant that you gain your ancestry from, because Goliaths are basically like a mixture of human and giant. I was really only torn between taking a fire giant, which would give us some additional firepower because it adds some fire damage to your attacks, or going with something that we can use a bit more. And considering the whole history with the Thunder Warriors and stuff, I'm going to go with a Storm's Thunder Giant. This is going to be very beneficial to us because it gives us something to do with our reaction much more often. By having this particular giant ancestry, now whenever you take damage from a creature within 60 feet of you, you can use your reaction to deal some thunder damage to them. It is just 1d8 thunder damage, but it's still something for you to use your reaction for very consistently. So I like the fact that you're utilizing more and more of your action economy by using this. You also get the feature large form. So at level 5 of this overall build, you can actually increase your size to large. You can do so as a bonus action, and this transformation lasts for 10 minutes. As soon as you do this, you have advantage on strength checks and your speed is increased by 10 feet. Because you're bigger, you have longer strides, but you can only use this feature once per long rest. You also get the feature powerful build, which does change from the old description. You do get an increase to your carrying capacity, but you get an additional benefit. Anytime anybody tries to grapple you, you have advantage to end that grappled condition. Then when it comes to a background, we're not going to be using anything from the 2024 Player's Handbook. We're going to be diving into a little bit of Spelljammer because we need a little more space in our Space Marine by choosing Wild Spacer. This gives us skill proficiencies in athletics and survival and gives us the tough feat, giving us an extra 2 hit points of health per level of this overall build. Then when it comes to your ability scores, we're going to have a point spread that looks like this, and it's very crucial that we lean into those stats. And we're going to be able to do this by having this starting class, Paladin. This is going to allow us to have heavy armor, which is definitely very needed as a Space Marine because their heavy armor is kind of iconic. You get 2 skill proficiencies, so we're going to grab Insight and Religion. At first level, you get Lay on Hands, so you have a pool of healing equal to 5 times your Paladin level, and you can lay a hand on somebody and heal them, or yourself. You do so as a bonus action, and if you heal at least 5 points, you can also cure the poisoned condition in the process. Also at first level of Paladin, you get spellcasting now, which you used to have to wait a little bit for. Now, we're going to dive into this in just one level because there's some key differences to how certain things work as far as being a Paladin in 2024. Additionally, at first level of Paladin, you get a Weapon Mastery, one of the new features from 2024. We usually have that sort of like chainsaw sword thing and a firearm in the other hand. So we're going to wind up getting Weapon Mastery in long swords for that one-handed weapon, and then we're going to grab pistols, which they did add to these standard weapons. Long swords grant the weapon mastery sap, so if you hit somebody with an attack, they have disadvantage on their next attack. And firearms, but specifically pistols, have the weapon mastery property Vex, which does give you advantage on your next attack roll against somebody after you hit them with an attack. At second level, we're going to do a multi-class right away because we need to make sure that you are up and running as quickly as possible, and we want to make sure that we only have to worry about so many stats. So we're going to wind up multi-classing into Warlock, and it's very fitting to go with the Warlock because if you've ever seen the initiation into becoming a Space Marine, it feels very warlocky. There's some key differences in how warlocks work now, because now they get eldritch invocations right away. And the pact that they used to get in the older version of D&D, now that's also an invocation that you can take at that first level, because the invocations you can choose at first level are much more limited. So we're going to take the invocation, Pact of the Blade. When you take that, you have a magical weapon you can summon into existence, and you don't have to use your strength or dexterity for it anymore. You can use your charisma modifier, meaning that now we can focus just on our charisma. We still have 15 points into strength, so we can wear the heaviest armor we can get our hands on, but charisma is going to be our main stat going forwards. And allowing us to focus just on that means that we can swing really hard, but there's something else we're missing here, because a pistol doesn't work super well in D&D. You get very limited shots. So we want to make sure that the weapon that you're firing off with as a Space Marine can fire off a bit more quickly, which is pretty easy to do because when you multiclass into Warlock right at first level, you get some packed magic. So we're going to take Booming Blade so you can hit somebody pretty hard with that longsword, but we're also going to take Eldritch Blast. Eldritch Blast is one of the more powerful cantrips as far as damage goes in D&D. It deals 1d10 force damage, but as you level up overall, you get to shoot out more blasts, whereas most other cantrips just do more damage. So this is going to be much more about like rapid fire shooting. You get 2 beams that shoot out at level 5, you get 3 beams at level 11, and then 4 beams at level 17. You can shoot them all at one creature or split it up however you want. Then we also get a couple spells we can choose. So we're going to take Hex because that allows us to boost up the damage of all of the blasting that we're going to be doing with Eldritch Blast. And then we're also going to focus on the very iconic armor that Space Marines have by taking the spell Armor of Agathis. This spell gives you 5 temporary hit points, and you can upcast that if you want, giving you an additional 5 temp HP per spell slot above the first level. And whenever you're hit by an attack, while you still have those temp HP active, which I should note, this spell lasts for an hour and doesn't require concentration, that creature that hit you will take an amount of damage equal to the total temp HP you got when you cast the spell. So if you use something like a 5th level spell for this, you got 25 HP, and if somebody hit you while any of those temp HP are still remaining, then you can wind up dealing 25 damage to them. And don't forget to add in your Goliath Thunder damage on top of it as a reaction. Now, we took 1 level of Warlock and it got us a whole lot of stuff. But let's jump back over to Paladin. At 2nd level of Paladin, we get one of the most iconic features that Paladins get: Paladin Smite. This was slightly altered from the older Divine Smite, which was in the 2014 rules. So now, Divine Smite is actually a spell. Thanks to the Paladin Smite feature, it is always prepared. And also thanks to this feature, you can actually cast that spell once without expending a spell slot. But there's a key difference to how these smites work in the 2024 version, because all of them were overhauled. So there used to be tons of different smites that Paladins have access to, but a basic Divine Smite was always something that you could activate when you hit somebody. All other smites that were spells required your bonus action to be prepared ahead of time, and you had to concentrate on them. Now, all smites work the same, and I kinda love the new way it works because I always hated using any of my spell slots for anything other than a Divine Smite, or trying to anticipate that I might be able to hit somebody pretty well with another type of smite. So now any type of smite, you spend your bonus action to cast, but you can do so immediately after you hit a creature with an attack. So you can still save it for a critical hit if you want to, but you can decide what type of smite you're gonna deal, and this adds a lot more versatility to the character, even if you can no longer stack a Divine Smite on top of a special type of smite. So you can do the basic Divine Smite, which is 2d8 extra radiant damage, or an extra 1d8 on top of that if it happens to be against a fiend or undead. Then any additional spell slot level that you're using above that first level, you can wind up increasing the damage by an additional 1d8. Now, most smites work this way, but other smites have different abilities that wind up triggering, and we're gonna wind up grabbing most of them. Like there's Shining Smite, which does 2d6 damage instead, but it basically highlights the enemy at the same time, making it so you have advantage on hits against them, and it can no longer benefit from being invisible. There's Blinding Smite, which does a bunch of damage, and it also blinds them, or of course like Banishing Smite to just banish them to another plane of existence. All of these are great to have in your arsenal, and you have plenty of different options available to you now. And it makes it so I don't want to hoard my smites as much, which is kind of nice to do. The big downside to smites working this way is that if you're going to have an opportunity attack, you can no longer smite on those. So that's really important to keep in mind. Not to mention, two-weapon fighting became a lot less viable for a paladin because you can no longer smite with an offhand attack, because that would also require your bonus action unless you happen to have the Nick weapon mastery. Now, some other stuff I would grab as far as first level spells though, because some of those were much higher level, are things like Guiding Bolt. So you can do more of a just straight up blast against somebody, and that will also cause some advantage against them later. You can use more of your battle cry with something like Heroism, making people immune to being frightened and giving them temp HP every single turn. Shield of Faith will boost up that insane armor by boosting your armor class by +2. And then there's a few things I'll save just for the character sheet, but there's also a few we'll note as we level up throughout Paladin. Now, the last thing you get at first level of Paladin is a fighting style, so we're going to take the fighting style, Dueling, giving us an extra 2 points of damage whenever we hit somebody with a one-handed attack, as long as we're not dual wielding. Then at third level of Paladin, you get Channel Divinity. You now have access to use this twice. You can regain 1 use per short rest or all of them on a long rest, and you get an additional use of it when you hit Paladin level 11. You can use it for Divine Sense to sense some evil stuff around you, or you can use it towards whatever subclass you take. And speaking of subclass, you also get that at level 3. And there's actually some really hard choices here, because depending on which storyline and which era of Warhammer 40k you're diving into, there's a lot of good options. I was really tempted for Oath of Conquest. I was really tempted for Oath of Devotion, or maybe even Redemption, but frankly, I think the abilities with Oath of Glory are probably going to work best. Becoming an Oath of Glory paladin does give you some additional spells that are added to your spell list as a paladin, but there's only 2 that are going to be very important for our build. The first is going to be all the way when you hit level 9 in this build, which is going to give you Haste, which is just an awesome spell to have in your arsenal. It gives you +2 to your armor class. It makes it so your speed is doubled. It makes it so that way you can take an additional action on your turn for either one attack or any of the other things you can use an action for. That's not a magic action. And then there's a new spell that I gotta throw on the character list, which you can only get once you hit at least 17th level of Paladin, but I kinda love it. It's called Yolanda's Regal Presence. You surround yourself with a 10-foot emanation of majesty, and anytime a creature enters your emanation or ends its turn there, it has to make a wisdom saving throw. On a failed save, it takes 4d6 psychic damage, and it immediately falls prone because it just can't handle your insane aura of majesty. And then on top of that, you can also push it 10 feet away once it falls prone. But that part is optional, which is pretty important. Even if it winds up succeeding on its saving throw, it winds up taking half damage and that's it, but it's still some damage either way. I know that's jumping the gun till way late in this overall build, but I wanted to make sure I hammered out most of those spells, because now we can focus just on the abilities. So when you take this subclass, you get the feature Inspiring Smite. So immediately after you cast Divine Smite, you can expend one of your channel divinities to add some temp HP to your allies. The number of temp HP is 2d8 plus your paladin level, which you can divvy up to any creatures within 30 feet of you, including yourself. And this is definitely used in the Space Marine 2 game to some extent, when you regain health by destroying your enemies. The last feature you get when you choose this subclass is Peerless Athlete. So as a bonus action, you can spend your channel divinity, and for 1 hour you have advantage on all of your athletics or acrobatics checks. Not to mention the distance of your jumps is increased by 10 feet. Then at 4th level of Paladin, you get an ability score improvement. So we're actually going to take a feat, because that armor is so damn iconic. So we're going to take Heavy Armor Master. This has been improved a little bit in the 2024 Player's Handbook. So you can increase your Constitution or Strength score by 1 point. So we're going to increase our Constitution. I know that makes it odd, but we'll address that later. The other benefit of taking this feat is damage reduction. So while you're wearing heavy armor, the damage you take is reduced. But it used to be reduced by a very set amount in the older Player's Handbook. Now, it's reduced by an amount equal to your proficiency bonus. So that means the amount of damage it reduces is going to increase as you level up throughout this build. But it is notable that it only reduces any bludgeoning, piercing, or slashing damage. Then at 5th level of Paladin, you get extra attack, meaning that you can attack twice as your action. Also at 5th level of Paladin, you now get Faithful Steed, because they thought Fine Steed was such an iconic part of Paladins and they didn't want people to miss out on it. So they added it as a default spell that you can now cast once for free. At 6th level of Paladin, you get Aura of Protection, so you constantly have a 10-foot emanation around you, and you and your allies get a bonus to all of your saving throws equal to your Charisma modifier. And we're only going to be focusing on Charisma most of the time, so that's going to boost up pretty quick. At 7th level of being a Oath of Glory Paladin, you get Aura of Alacrity, so your speed is increased by 10 feet, and any creature that starts its turn within 10 feet of you also gets their speed boosted by 10 feet. And just remember, that is also going to stack with your Goliath feature, so if you wind up becoming really big and at the same time boosting your speed, now you also get Aura of Alacrity, boosting it again, so you're a pretty darn quick Space Marine. Then at 8th level of Paladin, you get an ability score improvement, so let's go ahead and round out our Constitution and our Charisma, putting 1 point into each. Then at 9th level of Paladin, you get Abjure Foes, so you can spend one of your channel divinities to make your enemies just in awe of your presence. You can just present your weapon, and then a number of creatures within 60 feet of you equal to your Charisma modifier have to make a Wisdom saving throw. And if they fail, they're frightened for 1 minute or until they take some damage. And if they are frightened in this way, they have some additional limitations. They're only allowed to do one thing on their turn. Either take an action, a bonus action, or move. And limiting the action economy for your enemies is a pretty powerful move to have. Then at 10th level of Paladin, you get Aura of Courage. So now any of your friendly allies within your Aura of Protection are immune to being frightened. Then at 11th level of Paladin, you get Radiant Strikes. So now you get to deal some additional radiant damage to any melee attack, even if you don't want to use your channel divinity on that turn. It's only an extra 1d8 radiant damage, but it applies to all of your melee attacks, so it's still nice. Then at 12th level of Paladin, you get another ability score improvement. So let's go ahead and boost up that Charisma by 2 points. Then at 14th level of Paladin, you get Restoring Touch. So now you can spend some of your Lay on Hands points and remove a whole list of conditions from your allies. But it costs you 5 points per condition, and it doesn't also heal them at the same time. Then at 15th level of Paladin, thanks to being part of the Oath of Glory, you have a new option for using your reaction, because you get the feature Glorious Defense. So when you or another creature within 10 feet of you is hit by an attack, you can use your reaction to increase the attacked creature's armor class, possibly making them not get hit in the process. The bonus is equal to your Charisma modifier, and as part of Glorious Defense, if the attack misses when you use this feature, you then get a melee attack against them, as long as your weapon attack is within range of them. You can only use this feature a number of times equal to your Charisma modifier per long rest. Then at 16th level of Paladin, you get another ability score improvement, so let's go ahead and boost up our health by boosting up our Constitution by 2 points. At 18th level of Paladin, we get an expansion to our aura, so now our emanation has a range of 30 feet from us. Then at 19th level of Paladin, which is 20th level overall, we get an epic boon. Now there's a 20th level feature of being an Oath of Glory Paladin, and I don't think it's that great of a capstone personally, which is called Living Legend, which would be pretty applicable to Titus. But that feature does give 3 bonuses. It gives you advantage on charisma checks, which we don't care too much about that. We're more of a Marine, just focus on the combat. It allows you to use your reaction to reroll a saving throw, which is a pretty solid boost. But the most important one that I tend to focus on is Unerring Strike. So if you miss somebody with an attack, you can just make it a hit instead. You can only use that part once per turn though. So we're going to wind up making up for not getting that feature with our epic boon by choosing the Boon of Combat Prowess. This allows us to boost up 1 ability score by 1 point. So let's go ahead and boost up our strength by that 1 point, so it's at least rounded out and a little more useful, even though we're just mostly using it for our armor class. But it also gives us the feature Peerless Aim. So now if you miss with an attack, you can turn it into a hit once per turn, basically giving the exact same feature as Unerring Strike. That brings us to 20th level overall. Let me know what you think about this build in the comments down below, and if there's anything you do differently, I'd love to know about it. I was actually chatting about this over on my Discord, and a lot of people have been trying to build him pretty recently. If you want access to the full character sheet with all of the other spells that I have up there, feel free to check out my Patreon, linked in the description down below, where you can be just as awesome as some of these people who help support this channel. Not to mention I have some player character patrons that are especially awesome: Alexander White, Rave Lord, Nicole Biliak, Alone, The Holy 999s, Christopher Sam, Stark of Skies, Barrow Skrull, Felix Ulick, The One 0586, Kevin Shirley, Zephyros, That Funny Man 57, Joshua Maynard, CGC 2014, Panda Milkshake, Ted Z, Andrew Nobles, Karkat Kitane, Decker Joint, Zed 13, Viral Neravar, Daniel Gavin, The Dino 21, and Salvador. Then there's the Dungeon Master level patrons that I play D&D with: Dante Dixon, John Rohr, T Brownie, Julie V. De Oliveira, Shane Gilroy, Daniel Saffler, Comments X, GameSteak, and Devin Happy. And if you made it all the way to the end of this video, let me know by hitting that like button, and I'll be here helping you roll at least 3 nat 20s in your next T&D session, especially if you want to play as the Space Marine Titus in Dungeons & Dragons.